Okay, so we're talking about fellowships related to public service. There's some names in here I'm very familiar with, and so I imagine they have a good idea of what I mean by fellowship, and for the rest of you, I hope to explain it as well as I can in this meeting. And if you need me to clarify any part of this, please feel free. But for the most part, fellowships are experiences that bring people of similar interests and passions together. In this case, those fellowships are going to be circling around the idea of public service. Um, Public service is sort of seen twofold here. We took two definitions. Public service as a career, where you're serving a community, and then also public service as a just an area of interest, a passion of yours, something that you might do and never get paid for that job, just as a way to be a part of your community. Um, so those are sort of the two ways we're thinking about public service during this presentation. My name is Josh Stanek. I'm the Associate Director of the Office of National Fellowships. The Office of National Fellowships helps students to apply for various fellowships and scholarships, including the ones we're going to be going over today. And I will talk a little bit about how we work with students who choose to apply for any of these awards. In many cases, there's nothing to stop you from applying on your own. In some cases, there are some reasons, and I'll point that out, that you actually have to use our office. But either way, I think working with fellowship advisors like myself and my colleagues listed here is really valuable, not only to the quality of the application you'll submit, but also to learn some great skills through the process as well. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll talk about the Harry S. Truman Scholarship. This is for graduate school funding. The only year you can apply for this is in your third year of college. And I did not say junior because your third year of college could be your last year of college. It can be your third to last year from college. Just it's only your third year of college that you're able to apply for this one. Funds graduate school for people who are interested in careers in public service. You get to define what that public service is, and so they give you some examples: government, nonprofit or advocacy sectors, education. So as an illustration, we have Daniel Hubbard, our FSU's last Truman recipient. I think there are about 50 chosen every year around the country. And Daniel Hubbard was a transfer student to FSU, applied their year they arrived at FSU. They were, they'd been in the military prior to going to college, and they were a medic, and they came to FSU to study psychology. They got involved in undergraduate research right away. They got involved in a lab in the psychology department almost as soon as they got to FSU through a program called UROP, Undergraduate Research Opportunity Program. If you're a current freshman, you're actually eligible to apply for UROP. It's due May 1st. And basically it gets you involved in undergraduate research, gives you a class cohort of other students who are also just starting their research experiences. Gives you an instructor who is a junior or senior, who's done extensive undergraduate research, including most likely at that point working on an undergraduate thesis. And then you get to look at a list of different research opportunities going on around campus and find one that fits your interests. So really great for anyone who's like interested in research, but is maybe daunted by the idea of doing professional level academic research. So that's the UROP program, Undergraduate Research Opportunity Program. And the applications are due May 1st. So if you're currently a freshman, you can have this experience during your sophomore year. And so I would look into that. Circling back to Daniel participated in UROP as a transfer student at FSU, was in a lab in psychology focused on suicidal ideation, and his military experience plus his research and his career goals led him to write a proposal for the Truman Scholarship. You have to come up with a policy proposal, and his policy proposal was based on research done around suicidal ideation in the military, and how changing the acronyms that are used as part of the common jargon within the military to reflect a more positive, to reflect more positively on mental health care and healthcare in general would lead more people in the military to actually seek out help if they felt it was necessary for themselves or someone they cared about. And so that was his proposal, was sort of tweaking those acronyms to make them sound more positive with regard to mental health care. And so he received it, and it funds graduate school for people who are interested in public service. His goal, his career goal, is to be a professor at a military university in DC that I don't know enough about, but specifically working with future military medics. What are the requirements besides junior level academic standing or third year of college enrollment? It's also U.S. citizenship or to be a U.S. national. It's due every year in February, but there's actually a pretty extensive process where you have to work. Your university has to nominate you, and so that goes through our office. We help students on the application process, and then we have a faculty committee who meets with all of the students in the fall. So you actually have to really complete your application by, I think, October or November every year, to then meet with the FSU faculty committee who make decisions on who the university nominates. So even though the national deadline is February, this is something that you'd want to start working on early in the fall semester. And so if you're interested, basically follow up with me after this meeting if you're like a sophomore going into your, or a second year student going into your third year, and this is the year you'd like to apply. Follow up with me after this meeting, and we can sort of start that conversation and keep in touch with each other over the summer, and then get you connected with the person who runs point on the Harry S. Truman Scholarship, so that when fall hits, you're ready to go. Cool. So then there's Humanity in Action. So where the previous one was a fellowship that funded graduate school, this fellowship is about skill building, particularly leadership skill building, that centers on human rights, social justice. The keywords that they use in their description are resistance and discrimination. This one's also international, and it's rather than a multi-year experience like the Truman Scholarship, this is a 1-month intensive experience followed by 11 months of some sort of action. So if you're accepted into this program, you'd have this month in one of these locations listed in point number 1, Amsterdam, Atlanta, Berlin, Copenhagen, Sarajevo, or Warsaw. You get to select which ones you want to be considered for. And that month is spent with you and 49 other candidates exploring ideas of social justice, human rights, within the context of the history of that community and the present circumstances. So for instance, in Berlin, inevitably they're going to talk about the rise of National Socialism as a historical event. And they're also going to focus on like immigration and how Germany is handling how like German community is responding to the influx of refugees from Syria and Iraq. And I believe that's where the bulk of them are coming, but perhaps even from North Africa as well. So there's the historical, and then there's the present circumstances. In Atlanta, you'd focus on the civil rights movement. You'd focus on, in more present circumstances, the ongoing civil rights movement with Black Lives Matter, and the rise of populism in the United States. So they take the same topics no matter where you end up, and just contextualize it within the community that you're in. So you go there, you have these fantastic conversations and guest speakers, and the idea is that you build sort of a toolbox that you can use to make a difference in your home community. And that's the expectation, is that you take this month-long experience and then you use what you learned to make some small impact on your home community, whether that's Tallahassee or some other part of the United States. And so you have 11 months to complete some sort of action project. And you're sort of mentored through that by a member of the Humane Action Fellowship community. And by doing so, you actually become a Humanity and in Action Fellow. That's a title you get to own from then on. Kiara Gilbert here was, if you think, okay, well, this is, Josh is only going to be talking about fellowships that are for social scientists, people in the humanities. Kiara was a studio artist, and their project was focused on how art can bring communities together. Particularly, they've been doing a lot of research both before this program and since this program, been doing a lot of research on the African diaspora. I think their BFA project was focused on the African diaspora as it relates to food. And so they made some really cool art based on that. And now, because we still keep in touch, they're focusing on the African diaspora as it relates to religion. And so really fascinating stuff. And a lot of the work that they've been doing has really been influenced by their fellowship experience as well. So this one is for sophomores and above. So as long as you're in your second year or higher, you're eligible for this. And so if this is your first year, then next cycle would be the one to apply. And really at this point, the earliest you could apply would be next cycle for anyone, as this fellowship that is typically due at the beginning of January every year. This year it's happening remotely, but they're still doing it with the Berlin remote group. And but the expectation is that by next year we will be well vaccinated enough that people can participate in these programs in person. And that reminded me, I wanted to mention something else about this. Well, if it's important, it'll come back to me. So then we have fellowships for people who are interested in becoming US diplomats. So people who are interested in becoming foreign service officers. These fellowships fund graduate school for people who want to be foreign service officers working at US embassies around the world, or as US foreign service officers located in DC. Pickering, Payne, and Rangel, we write all of them and share them all at once because really there's very little difference between them as far as what they're looking for and what their purpose is. They all fund 2 years master's degrees in fields related to international affairs. They also all three provide internships each summer for 2 summers during your program. Those internships are with the legislator in DC, as well as a US embassy around the world. The real difference is Payne. Payne is focused on USAID foreign service. So it's international development. So if you're interested in specifically working with developing nations, Payne would be the one to go for. Pickering and Rangel are US Department of State Foreign Service. While USAID falls under the Department of State, it also doesn't. So it's sort of a gray area. But we've had success with all three of these. Carolina Echeverry is a great example. Carolina actually applied for Pickering and Rangel 3 years in a row before she received it. And so, if you ever want to talk to someone about stick-to-itiveness, Carolina is the person to chat with. And the entire time they were working in DC, essentially working for a private company that sort of supported U.S. Department of State around the world, and a lot of her job was focused on organizing trips for legislators in DC to visit and see some of the work that is being done around the world by the Department of State and USAID. So some really cool stuff. So really fantastic programs. I think we talk about when they're due. So this one does require US citizenship eligibility as well. The earliest you could apply for this is your senior year, because these are all fellowships that would fund graduate school the following fall. I listed when they're typically due. Wrangell and Pickering typically due late September, mid to late September, usually like the 18th and 21st, somewhere around there. Payne is usually due November 1st on the dot. And then we also have something called the Wrangell Summer Enrichment Program, which is not for seniors. Well, it is also for seniors, but not exclusively for seniors. This is something you can apply for as a sophomore, junior, or senior. Full-time graduate, undergraduates with at least sophomore standing 3.2 GPA at the time of application. This award is typically due early February. And this is for someone who's interested in exploring the careers that exist within international affairs. So if you're like, yes, I'm interested in being a foreign service officer, but I'm not 100% set on that, then something like the Wrangell Summer Enrichment Program would be really good for you, because it's a month-long experience in DC. You're at Howard University taking 2 graduate level courses. While you're doing that, you're also taking tours of like the Department of State or the Institute for International Peace, and meeting guest speakers from different nonprofits or federal agencies whose work relates to international affairs. And so you really get to see the scope of work that exists out there for someone who's interested in that career. And so their hope is that by the time that month-long experience ends, you have a better idea of where you see your career going within international affairs. And so it's a great program if that's you, if you're like, I think that's the route I want to go, but I'm not certain about what I want to do with those degrees, then this program can be really good for you. Similar to that one, we'll talk about another program in a moment called the Public Policy and International Affairs Junior Summer Institute. So then there's the Goldwater Institute's Ronald Reagan Fellows Internship Program. It's a really long name. But this is an opportunity if you're an economist and want to explore public service as it relates to economics. This is an opportunity for you to be essentially a research assistant at a think tank working with regards to economics. And so the eligibility for this one, college juniors or seniors or graduate students or recent graduates. So really, you can apply as early as your junior year, and then you've got a handful of years after that, depending on whether or not you go to grad school. Able to work at least 3 full days a week. So this is something that you can actually do remotely. Something you can do from your computer. Active interest in public policy, appreciation for free enterprise system, constitutionally limited government and free market principles. They're sort of letting you know their political leanings on that one. So you can apply for a number of different deadlines. Fall applications are due in August for an experience that would begin in spring. Spring applications are due in December for an opportunity that would begin in the summer. Or I'm sorry, fall is due in August for an experience that would begin that fall. So spring, summer, and then March for summer. Sorry about that. Hold on one second. Sorry, I have 3 dogs at home, and so they get excited when cars or people drive by. So then we have the Florida Gubernatorial Fellows. You know, we've been talking about international experiences. We've been talking about public service at the federal level. What we haven't talked about is like, what if you are interested in state work? And so this could be a really good experience for you. Really incredible program. It is, at this point, you have to be at least a junior to apply, but you can have this experience during your undergraduate. You can have this experience after you graduate. You can have this experience while as a grad student in Florida. And it's really cool because it's a fellowship in the traditional sense, in that it, again, brings people of similar interests and passions together, but also has a very strong internship component. So if you're interested in hands-on work experience, and this also fits that as well. So as a Florida Gubernatorial Fellow, you actually get to work for a year in a governor's agency where you have a project that you're working on. You're doing other things, but the goal is by the time this this year ends, you'll have completed this project that was established at the beginning. And on top of that, you have the fellowship component where you and your peers get together every week to reflect on your experiences. Each of you are in different agencies within the Florida government. So you reflect on your experiences. Usually have guest speakers come and chat with you. You take field trips. There's a special trip to DC that happens every spring. The orientation takes place in Jacksonville Beach. It seems like both very fun and very impactful. So on top of that, you're paid for the internship experience. So there's a hourly wage for your work. Plus, Florida State has agreed since this program's inception that we would waive the tuition for any participants from FSU. So if you're currently an FSU student during this experience, your last year of undergraduate tuition is waived, or your first year of grad school, or even your second year of grad school, if you decide to wait a couple years, is waived while you're participating in the program. And that seems to be the case around the state, that your tuition is waived. I don't think it's guaranteed, but that's I can tell you that FSU has waived it every year. So really fantastic program. Eligibility, full-time enrolled student, either graduate or undergraduates. As I said, if you're currently an undergraduate, you can apply for this during your junior. You can also apply for it during your senior year. We've had students participate who applied as seniors to participate during their first year of graduate school. We've also had students as seniors apply to have this experience after they graduate, but sort of as a gap year. So you're just working, you're doing your internship full time. And you can sort of work your hours however you want. It sounds like it's a conversation between you and whatever agency you're paired with, but they're looking for 20 hours, but you can do up to 40. We've had some students do basically make this a full-time job, a gap year experience. You have to be enrolled full-time as a student when you apply for this program. These are due, this year was actually due March 1st, but typically it's due at the beginning of February. So just, we'll see what they decide next year. I would say get in touch with us early fall if this one piques your interest. Cool. Okay, so I mentioned the Wrangell Summer Enrichment Program and said that there was another similar program, and that's the Public Policy International Affairs Junior Summer Institute. This one's great because it doesn't have to be international affairs experience exclusively. I had a student participate in this program last summer who made it very clear, had no interest in international affairs, but very strong interest in public policy. So if your interest is more domestic, then this is also a really good program for you. But the idea here is, again, to really introduce you to the variety of careers that exist for people who have a passion for public policy and or international affairs. These programs happen at a variety of universities that are listed in the second bullet point there: Carnegie Mellon, UC Berkeley, Princeton, University of Michigan, University of Minnesota. For whatever reason, we have a lot of students end up selected for Carnegie Mellon. You're just randomly selected, or at least it appears random. But we had someone participate in University of Michigan last year, and I think we have someone at University of Michigan this coming summer too. So there's that. There's the stipend that you're paid during the experience. There's the $5,000 that they would give you toward graduate school tuition. From the alumni of this program, so from PPIA fellows, there also seems to be an indication that if a school is a member of the consortium, which is broader than these 5. There's about 20 schools on there, and they're all really like George Washington, American University, really fantastic universities for social sciences. There tends to be a case that they'll give you a pretty substantial scholarship or fellowship if you decide to go to grad school there. I've had some students or alumni of the program tell me that they've basically had no fees to pay, and so had their grad programs covered because they participated in this program, which occurs, as you can probably guess, because the second half of the name is Junior Summer Institute. This program occurs after the summer after your junior year. So you apply at the beginning of your junior year in November for an experience that would occur summer after your junior year. So here are the requirements. Did I update those dates? No. Yes, I did. Yes, those dates are updated. So graduation date between December 2021 and August 2022. So you can apply in your last semester of undergrad for an experience that would occur that following summer, but that would have to be your third year. Okay, so those are the fellowships I wanted to introduce you to, and all that to say, there's actually plenty of other public service fellowships, but I wanted to cover the variety more than anything else. And it's not my job as a fellowship advisor to say, hey, these exist, go and apply, which is all I've done here, but we actually help students with the application processes. So if you decide that you do want to apply, whether it's something that's required like Truman, or something that you can elect whether or not you work with us, like say Humanity in Action or Public Policy International Affairs Junior Summer Institute, our office can be very supportive in this process. So if you come to the application with enough time, I'm generally here to help you find good recommenders, to give you a lot of feedback on your essays. I actually spend a lot of time with students going over drafts of essays, depending on how much time you've given us to work before the national deadline. Giving you resources like contacts for the program, or contacts at FSU or different organizations that might help you at FSU. Maybe that's, oh, well, if you're interested in becoming a U.S. diplomat, then perhaps consider joining the Global Initiatives Program at FSU, which is essentially model UN. But a lot of my time is spent on weekly meetings, giving students feedback on their essays, helping them to make the strongest cases they can before the national deadline. And so we hope that by utilizing our office, you can walk away with not only a strong application that you're able to submit by the deadline, and something that you probably put in more time than you typically would if you weren't working with an office who had an expectation that, hey, by next week you're going to have new drafts of these essays, and then the following week we'll do the exact same thing. That sort of pushing you to draft and redraft, something that I know many of us rarely do for anything we turn in for grades, and we're probably used to getting A's, considering the fact that you're all here at FSU. Taking the time to actually write and think about how to make a stronger case, and how to dig deeper into the topic is something that becomes a skill set that you can use after the experience as well. And so that's what we hope that students walk away from these experiences with, which is like a clear idea of how to approach these types of applications, because this is essentially the same type of writing you're going to be doing when you apply to grad school, writing cover letters for jobs. And it's not something you're really ever trained in doing. On top of that, what I mean by that is, like, you've been trained to critically analyze like data, you've been trained to critically analyze literature, other works of art, but FSU doesn't, and rarely does a class exist that helps you to sort of turn that critical lens on yourself. And that's where these applications become really valuable in teaching you how to critically analyze your own work. And then in addition, that critical analysis and the self-reflection that is required also tends to lead people to have a clear idea of who they are and what they want to accomplish, and take these cloudy ideas of like your goals and sort of forces you to lay out a path, because all of these applications, HIA, Truman, whatever it is, they're all asking the same thing. They're saying, who are you? Who do you want to be in your future? And how does this opportunity get you a step closer to that goal? And so by being forced to answer those questions, you're forced to write down in as clear language as possible, how this fits into your path and why you're a good candidate for it. And in doing so, a lot of people tend to walk away with a better idea of who they are and what that path looks like, because it forces you to take those cloudy ideas and make it clear for not only others, but also yourself. So that's how we work with students. Here's our contact information. As I said, my name is Josh Stanek, so I'm the one on the bottom left. But if you would like to contact any of my colleagues and work with them, maybe you've seen them before, maybe just really didn't like hearing from me. That's also fine. Just love to have you working with our office. And that's my presentation. So I will turn it over to you all for questions. And so if you just want to toss them in the chat, I can field them there. And if you don't have questions, that's also fine. I did want to show you one other thing, which is our website. I don't know if anyone here has explored this before, but I want to just show you, we have a really convenient search feature on our website. So this is our website, web address, just onf.fsu.edu, pretty easy to follow. So Office National Fellowships, onf.fsu.edu. We have this tab here, Student Fellowships. And if you click this, you have this absurdly long list of fellowships based on all kinds of things. But you can come to these parameters here and you can set parameters based on your identity. You can set them based on your area of study. So you can be like, well, I'm a social scientist. And purpose, I'm interested in fellowships related to public service. And you can see how this list has shrunk since then. And you can say, I'm looking for fellowships for juniors and seniors. And so there, now you have a much shorter list. Or you can do, of course, you can do keyword searches as well. But I really think these filters are pretty useful. So if you are interested in the idea of fellowships, but don't feel like I covered anything that really spoke to you, come play around with this. I'll send you the link in the chat box so you can use that. Cool. Well, yeah, I see one person. Sorry, I responded directly to one person. There you go. There's the link to that search feature. And what I'd say is if anything piqued your interest, even remotely, even if it's not due for like 2 years from now, go ahead and set up an appointment with me or one of my colleagues. We'd be happy to start talking to you about what that will look like so that you have as much information ahead of time as possible so that you can be thinking about how the experiences you're having now reflect that goal that you have for yourself later. Because a lot of these fellowships do require, or I guess rather I would say, these fellowships, the essays tend to benefit from experience rather than passion. What I mean by that is when you're describing something you care about, I'm going to pick on doctors for a moment because it's unlikely that many of them are here. It's not uncommon for the first draft of someone's personal statement for med school to say something like, sentence 1, I have wanted to be a doctor for as long as I can remember, or ever since I broke my arm and got it mended, I've wanted to be a doctor. And what you're trying to reflect there, and I know I'm picking on doctors, but everyone does this. What you're trying to reflect there is evidence of passion through time, but it's actually not that compelling. It can be when you have tone of voice and stuff involved as well, but that doesn't really come off on a personal statement. So these essays, when I say they benefit from action rather than passion, it's, if this person says they've always wanted to be a doctor, then where's the proof in their experiences? And so that's why having these conversations well before an application's due is really useful, because we can already start thinking about like, what experiences are you having now that reflect this thing you say you're passionate about? If you're passionate about human rights, what are you involved in? If you're passionate about law, what are you involved in? And since I happen to have been at FSU for over 10 years, I'm very aware of different organizations on campus and could say, hey, you're not really exploring this passion yet. Here's some ways you might want to go about doing that. So I'd say, if any of this interested you, reach out sooner than you think you should. And if that's tomorrow, awesome. So thank you all so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you. As I said, I recorded this, so I'll be posting this onto our social media, onto our YouTube channel, and you can check out other videos there. But I'll be sure to share it with you all once it's posted. Cool. Yeah, appreciate all the kind messages, and everyone have a really good day.